Sound is everything. Today I'm going to show you guys my top 5 sound design secrets, how I actually edit these sounds into a real project that I'm working on right now for Karate Combat. And I'm going to show you guys all of this in just 5 minutes. One of the secrets to powerful sound design is layering. Let's take a hit for example. If I want to transition from one scene to another using a hit, I could just grab a standard subsonic hit or boom and drop that in, and yeah, it could work, but it sounds a little flat. Now, watch what happens when I layer the exact same sub hit with a snappier impact. Boom! You got a completely different sound. You've got low-end power and high-end frequency crack, and this leads to a fuller, more intentional sound. Now, the same concept applies to risers and whooshes. If you got one riser that sounds really bright and crispy, and it kind of cuts through all the sound, but it lacks that body and depth, then maybe you want to try combining it with another riser that has a little bit of a darker, thicker tone to it. I think it's important not to think of sounds in categories, but to think of them in frequencies, combining those sounds that fill in the different parts of the spectrum. Now, my second secret for you guys today is using EQ properly, because it allows you to carve out space in certain sounds. Let's say you got music and dialogue, and typically they're competing for the same attention. Instead of turning down the music, what you could do is you could take an EQ and carve out some space in the music track. And to do this, all you have to do is take an EQ plugin and dip the EQ from 2K to the 5K range. That is typically where dialogue lives. And just a gentle curve will make your dialogue or vocals pop without killing the overall music in your mix. But that's not the only way you could use EQ. You could actually use EQ to shape individual sound effects. If you want a hit that feels snappier, boost the highs. If you want it to feel heavier, do the opposite. And this is how I typically balance layers in my sound design. Take these two pads for example. If you carve out space for both of these sounds to live, this lower pad sounds great because it has weight and it really gives a nice low undertone to the entire score. But then this higher tone is great because it gives that ambience, really gives you an emotion in this musical track. Now I'm going to show you guys one of my favorite sound design tricks, and that is how you could turn any song into a cinematic trailer. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I wanted to use this song, but I wanted the intro of the video to feel really cinematic, and I wanted to climax the music so that way when it dropped on the beat of the original track. So to do this, I took the full music track and I broke it out into 2 stems. A vocal track and a music track. Then I laid both of these tracks on top of each other. That way I can manipulate them independently. For now, I'm going to turn down the instrumental music and just leave the vocal track playing. Now, something that's very important is understanding the key of the song that you're working with. This particular song is in the key of F sharp minor. Now for my secret weapon. I'm going to go into multiply sound. And multiply sound is tonal sound effects. These sound effects you can actually use because all of the sound effects come in every single key that you could possibly imagine. So I'm gonna grab a low pad and I'm gonna grab a high pad in the same key of the song, which is F sharp minor. Then I'm gonna add a violin in the same key to add a little bit of that organic texture, and then I'm gonna grab a couple of melodic risers. So this is what I was able to create by using these sound effects with the vocal track. And because I have all of these different sound effects all in the same key of the song, I'm able to do almost anything that I want. Another little cheat code of mine is creating space with volume, panning, and reverb. Take this section of my video for example. I purposely cut out the vocals of the music to make room for the coach saying, "You're gonna be world champion."
World champion, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Now when the dialogue finishes, we slowly have the vocals come back in, and when the beat hits, the vocals are back in being the loudest thing in the mix. Panning is also very important because this places the sound in the imaginary room that you've created. Now, taking something like these glitches, I purposely pan some of the glitches hard left and hard right. This really allows you to create a wide space that these effects are coming in and out of, which gives you the illusion that you're in a very wide room. Now, another really awesome way to use panning is to mimic where the sound is coming from in your frame. For example, whenever my character is in one part of the frame, I would pan the sound to that part of the frame. This not only allows your mix to be a little bit more dynamic, but it also gives your audience an audio representation to match the visuals that are happening in the frame. And what's very important to remember here, that if everything is coming dead in the center of your mix, it's gonna sound like a bunch of jumbled up mess. But if you're able to pan and put different sounds in different places, well, now you have a bunch of different sounds that can live in the same space, but they're all in different places of the mix. Reverb is another great way to create space in your mix because it allows you to give your sound distance. For example, this sound of weights I replaced, but because the weights were recorded right up next to a microphone, it sounded very close, which didn't make sense, especially with the wide shot and in the gym that we were in. So in order to give this a little bit more of a realistic sound, I added some reverb to the weights, and now we have something that matches the visuals. Now, another creative way that you could use reverb is like I did in this middle section. By adding reverb to the vocal track and slowly fading it in, it feels like it's coming from far away in the distance. And then when the beat drops, I take off the reverb, and now it has way more impact. There's another little trick that you can do. You could actually replace the real sounds with sound design, like something like hits or something like whooshes. A great example of this would be when this fighter smashes down the medicine ball on the ground. Instead of using that actual hit of the medicine ball, I replaced that hit with a snappy impact. And right away, you could feel the ball hitting the floor.
Let's go, let's go, let's
I want to give a huge shout out for Multiply Sound for sponsoring this video. And if you guys want to check out these awesome sound design packs, I'll leave them down below. You guys can check those out. I want to thank you guys so much for stopping in, hanging out, and I'll see you guys next week. Deuces.